Hello everyone. This is another donator request from YouBuyweRush. Question and answer session for non-Muslims about Islam and politics. Politics. We're going to break this down into two 19-minute videos. And oh yeah, before I was looking at the time, 38:41, and forgot the next line. Before we get started, there is a thanks button. You can donate to the channel. You don't have to. All donations are appreciated. You can subscribe. And if you don't want to do any of that, just give me a thumbs up. That helps. Okay? Let's get into the video.
Now I'm going to open it up for questions. So, hit me with everything you got. Don't hold back. No political correctness. Go ahead. Oh, come on. You have no questions, man. I'm sure you were listening to something on TV or watching something and you thought, man, Muslims, they're like this or that. Something, any question you have, this is your opportunity. I'm here for you. So, ask away. I'm going to give preference to non-Muslims first. If you're Muslims, please hold your hands. You can ask me later. Go ahead.
What can we do as non-Muslims to help dispel these false rumors that we're talking about?
Man, that was it. Did I pay you for that? I'm kidding. That's an excellent question. What can we as non-Muslims do to dispel these notions? The first thing which you're doing, come and talk. Open up those lines of communication. Secondly, and this is very important, because if you think about Germany and what happened during the horrible incident of the World War II Holocaust, what happened is that a huge country sat by and watched a population get demonized and killed, and they all thought, well, it's not my problem. And then it became their problem, because it's not going to be one ethnicity that's going to be demonized. So as non-Muslims, it's very important that you take an active role in stopping Islamophobia. When you see your politicians talk about, Muslims need to be blocked and sent home or whatever, you need to say, well, why? My Muslim neighbor who hasn't done anything wrong, he hasn't broken any laws, why would he be penalized for his ethnicity? Because
also, Muslims need to go home. Okay, but what if you were an American-born person who converted to, or as I was told, you revert back to Muslims, or back to Islam? Like if I became one, where do I go? I can't be kicked out of the country. Where do I go? I was born here, raised here. I'm deported where? That's my question. Like, I can't be kicked out because of my beliefs, because somebody else doesn't like the fact that, well, we're a Christian country. Are we, though? We have a majority of Christian people, sure. But the founding fathers weren't necessarily Christians like we know today. So, George Washington wasn't really a member of any religious group. And when he prayed with his hands up like this and his eyes open and like looking up. And most people, you would think, you pray like this. If you're a Christian, he was just like this. Like, so, what are we talking about? Because he does this? When you're a Muslim, I think you kind of pray like this with your hands out or something like that. So, I'm not saying Washington was Muslim, but he didn't pray the normal way. So, you could say, well, he's not praying correctly. You know what I mean? Like, all I'm trying to say is, we are a Christian nation in terms of what people want to believe, but that doesn't necessarily hold true. We're just we're supposed to be a nation of a mixing pot of people and cultures, and with that comes religions. So you can't demonize somebody because we are a welcoming country.
if we don't, then the same thing's going to happen here that happened here during the Japanese internment camps during World War II. The same kind of xenophobic ideas, they used to lynch Italians and used to blame Mexicans, which is still going on. And the same kind of things that happened in Germany during Hitler's time. Those kind of things will happen again. History repeats itself. Except the ethnicity will change. Today it's Muslims, tomorrow it may be Mormons, then it may be Jews, it may be somebody else. So we all, as humans, as people who believe in righteousness, should come together and stand up against this kind of xenophobic attitude. If you hear somebody make a racist joke about a Muslim, tell them it's not okay. You know, it's equally not okay to make a 7-Eleven joke as it is not to make about an African American or a Jewish American, all of that. And when you see people in your circle talk about, well, Muslims are like that or Muslims are like that, you should ask, have you ever spoken to a Muslim? Did you ever go to a mosque? Did you ever sit with anybody? And these kinds of little steps will go a long way. Other than that, get some.
The answer is no, because they go with the stereotype that they want to believe.
Your friends, come to the mosque, have some food, enjoy it, ask questions, open up dialogue, and I think we can work together to build bridges and a better tomorrow. Next. That's going to be a hard question to follow up, but somebody.
2 questions. First,
you get one for you, and the second one I got to cut. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, 2 questions.
The first one is that there are constant conflicts in the Middle Eastern areas, specifically between the different Muslim tribes. Why does that happen?
Good question. So, let's take a 2-part answer to that. First thing, if you go back historically between the Catholic and the Protestant factions within Christianity, have there been a lot of friction, fighting, massacres, accusations of being apostates, genocide? Yes, you can go look up your history books, right? So that tells you this is not something about factions. It has to do with politics. And in the Middle East, if you look at Iraq, or if you look at Syria, or if you look at many of these countries, until those governments were destabilized, did you have those conflicts? No. But when you walk into a country and you take out, for example, just as a wild example, let's say some country has a lot of oil, and you decide that you're going to invade that country because they have weapons of mass destruction that you never find, right? You walk into a country, what do you do first? Take out the police, take out the military. What do you guard? The oil fields? You don't go. You don't guard the ammo dumps, right? So what happens? Chaos. People start to cling up into little cults, little groups to defend their territory, to defend sources. It's not about a religious faction, because all those people in Syria were living together fine until you had bombings and killings. And then what happens? People, in human nature, they start to group up. Think of it this way. Like tomorrow, if China decides that Trump is a horrible president, and like Saddam Hussein, he's not fit to govern, and they attack the US, and they take out the military, and they take out the police, and you call 911, and there's just beep, right? Not just the whole time, but just a beep. And there's no police, and your stores, your grocery stores are running out of water. What are you going to do? You're going to take your friends, and you're going to get your, this is UCSD, you may not get a gun, but you might get like a book from your library or something. And you're going to rush down there and you're going to start to try to defend whatever resources you have. And how are you going to differentiate yourself from the next neighborhood? It might be by religious faction, it might be by tribe, it might be by language, it may be Mexicans against blacks, it may be North San Diego against South, it might be state against UCSD, but you're going to use something. And that's what you see in the Middle East. It's about resources. It's not about a religious conflict. Otherwise, you would have had it before. You would have continued to have it. When does it happen? When the places are destabilized.
But back then, wasn't there constant conflicts between the Shiite and the Sunnis?
So historically, if you look at the original problems, they began in around 1400 years ago or 1350 years ago. From then on, these problems haven't happened until recently. Until Iran and their pushing for conflict and oil and control the Middle East. You didn't have this. If you look at it, think of it this way, right? Saddam was what faction? It was Sunni, right? And the Kurds are what? Sunni. They're both Sunni. But there was fighting because it was political. It had to do with the fact that the US said to the Kurds, stand up against Saddam, we'll support you. When they stood up, nobody came, and they got slaughtered. It wasn't because they were Sunni, because Saddam was Sunni himself. Saddam's foreign minister, his name was Tariq Aziz, he was Christian. So this had nothing to do with religion or factions. It had to do with power. But when Saddam got taken out of power, and the US invaded Iraq, even though Iraq had nothing to do with Osama bin Laden, or 9/11, or weapons of mass destruction, there was no reason for us to go there. He was a bad president, sure. He was a horrible person. But how many bad presidents are in the world? North Korea is not really a good guy, right? I mean, China you could say you don't like China, or Sudan, or Putin. I don't like Putin. Should we invade Russia? No. You know, somebody may not like Obama, somebody may not like Bush, somebody may not like Trump. Should they invade the US? No. When you invade a country, and you take out the military, you take out the police, those people that were living as neighbors, as friends, whatever faction they may be, now to survive, for food, for water, for dominance, they're going to fight each other. So
you also cause so much chaos and destabilization that, let's say you have people who maybe they don't like each other, but they found common ground to get along, to be able to coexist together. And they also know there's repercussions of, I don't like him, he doesn't like me. We have to interact to a certain point. We have to go to a grocery store, or we have to do this, or we have to do that. Kids have to go to the same school. We put that aside. We just don't interact. Something happens. War happens. Some kind of destabilization happens. What's to stop me from saying, this is the perfect time to take that person out? Because you're looking at all this chaos and you're thinking, what's to stop him from using this chaos, this moment? Can I have something on me? What's to stop him from using this moment to get me, to get my family? Or to get that grocery store, to get the things that I might need. You might become paranoid. And so you're going to use that moment to do something that you can never undo. Do you know what I mean? And you might find yourself crossing that line when, because of what's going on, you've built this moment up, and now it's become irrational in your mind, where it's become worse than maybe what it is, even though that could be terrible. But now you're acting on it, and you're going to do something where, yeah, it's not good. So there's also those things as well. I kind of rambled on. I do apologize.
this is more political than religious.
Then with the recent conflicts in Western Europe due to the refugee influxes, there has been talk of people trying to implement Sharia law. Would that also be political then?
I didn't understand. So what does the refugee crisis have to do with Sharia law?
They say that after the refugees are in Europe,
Right.
the communities there, and they are trying to implement Sharia law
Okay, so-
with the local government.
So this is purely fiction. This might as well be on Looney Tunes, late night, Adult Swim, because there is no fact to that at all. Refugees that are coming from Syria aren't trying to implement any kind of law. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to eat and sleep. There is no single incident that you can point to in any European country where a Syrian refugee came to Europe and tried in any way to implement Sharia law. Those refugees are just trying to survive and get away from a place where they're being bombed, chemically attacked, massacred, because we decided to light a fire and then just walk away and say, we're not going to really fix it, we're just going to bomb from the sky. What the hell kind of solution is that?
All they're going to try to do is get in, they're going to get in, be safe, and then maybe find a community where there are others of them, so they can, you find comfort in that, to where you can be around people who understand what's happening. Now you're also going to have people who are there, who are sent there to help you, but that's three. You want to get in, get safe, maybe find people who also are experiencing the same thing, and then you want to blend in. They're not showing up and going, okay, attention, everyone here, I know we're refugees, but we were thinking on the way here that it would be best for all of you to get on board with what we want, okay? Does everyone understand this is now the way it is? No. You're going to blend into that community. You're going to live your life what you're accustomed to, but you're also going to try to experience this new culture because it's a culture shock and you kind of have to. You have to adapt. Adapt, that's the word. So you're going to do that. And you're going to do everything you can to not ruffle any feathers, to upset anyone, because you don't want to risk being booted out and being sent back to where you're from, where there's a war going on. You are going to be the nicest person. You're going to be polite. You're going to shake hands, look people in the eye, smile, be happy, because you also know you're getting I don't want to say a second chance at life, but you're not in a bad spot. You're going to be one of the best citizens and civilians that anyone could ever ask for, because you truly appreciate the situation you're in now. You're not stepping in and instituting anything from where you are and expecting now everyone else has to adapt to it. No. You're coming into a situation, so you have to adapt. That's ridiculous to think that they're going to start doing that. Anyone, any religion, any group.
So Syrian refugees, think of it like this. Let's say, what neighborhood you live in. Don't tell me your house, it's okay, but neighborhood. La Jolla, right?
Yeah.
Sure, rich kid. So now what happens is that, let's say you're living in La Jolla and there's some conflict between your billionaires and your millionaires, and they start bombing you. And bombs are falling on your house. And your brother is killed with a bomb. You're just walking into the store and he gets killed. And the food stores are empty. There's no food. What are you going to do? Are you trying to implement your law? No, you're just trying to get out of there and eat somewhere. So these kinds of xenophobic ideas aren't in reality. Now, what is Sharia law and how is it implemented and what does it have to do? That's a different issue. But the issue of the Syrian refugees has nothing to do with them trying to bring any kind of political change in Europe. They're just trying to survive. And if we hadn't invaded Iraq and bombed Syria, they were perfectly fine where they were. Yes?
I also have two things. So one thing is more of a comment. You were saying how it's more about politics than religion, but a lot of the times it's really hard to separate both. Like for example, I grew up in Lebanon, and there it's pretty much the same thing. Like a person is born with their religion on their ID. The president has to be a specific religion.
Right.
Like all the ministers have to be a specific religion. So you can't really separate politics from religion and say, oh, these two groups are fighting, but it's about politics, it's not about religion.
Sure.
So how can you separate that
Sure.
in a country
So-
like Lebanon?
So, in Lebanon, there was a time you had a civil war, right?
A lot of civil wars, yes.
Okay. One major one where you really kind of went at it, right? Before that time, did you not have those religious groups?
We always did.
You always
we
did?
have problems between
Right, but you did live in peace for a long time. And then there were times where you had conflicts, right? Okay, so let's take it a different level. In Lebanon, you have Sunnis, you have Shia, you have Christians, right? You have Druze and all that too, but let's take the major groups. In the United States, we have those groups as well. In, let's say, Turkey, you have those groups as well. In China, you have those groups. If it's based on religion only, then why is it that those countries don't have war going on between them? But in Lebanon, you have also a political problem. You have a very weak government, which keeps on taking presidents out, and Hariri gets killed, and cabinet gets taken by Hezbollah. So that has to do with politics. Hezbollah is a political group. Not even every Shia supports Hezbollah, right? You're from Lebanon, are you up on the politics, or you just...
Hezbollah is Shia?
Yes. So Hezbollah is a political group. They have political goals.
Yeah.
Hezbollah is fighting in Syria right now. If it had to do with religion, and only having to do with what are they doing in Syria? What are they doing in other places? Hezbollah and Hamas and other groups, they're from different sects. Hamas is Sunni, Hezbollah is Shia. But in many political things, they work together. So in the end, it is politics. But the name of religion is used. And the fact of that, how it's proven, is the fact that other people in other societies, in other countries, where there's a stronger form of government, where there are institutions that work, those groups aren't fighting each other. Everybody's living peacefully. But when you have a meltdown of a system, then people use those groups. In Lebanon, you had Kurds that came over, that had their own conflicts, even though they were Sunni. They had fights with other Sunnis. In Iraq, right now, you look at the Arab Sunnis and the Kurd Sunnis, they're fighting. Different Shia militias are fighting each other. Muqtada Sadr just attacked their parliament with stuff, and they're all Shia. So this isn't about doctrine or faith. This has to do with political causes by groups like Hezbollah, groups like Hamas, groups like Muqtada Sadr's little personal army, the PKK, who are politically motivated.
But didn't the split between Shia and Sunni start politically?
True.
When Ali wanted, when the
Sure.
Shias are with Ali and then the Sunnis.
So there was no Sunni at that time in that sense. There was a Jama'ah,
Yeah.
and then there was a split. Shia means sect. It's a split. So there was the Muslim Ummah, and then there was a split. But Ali, for example, he never cursed Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, or those kinds of problems didn't happen. What you see in Iran today, and what you see in Iraq today, and many of the places, these are political things that have been fueled over time. These aren't original problems that happened before. And that's why in many countries, Sunni and Shia and the people live next to each other without any problems. They have no doctrinal problems. But once you bring politics into it, once you take the government out of it, once you make resources less readily available, those fights begin. Even between different Christian sects. I mean, if you look at it from a perspective of history, if you look at Europe, how many battles were there between Protestants and Catholics, and how many massacres and killings and wars happened because of that? Even look at the Ireland situation with the IRA, who were Catholic, Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, who were Protestants. I used to live in England. They blew up malls, even when I lived there. But now everybody lives peacefully. Why? Because of political situation, right? It's not an issue between Catholics and Protestants. It's an issue when there is resources or lack of a government ability to control a country. Otherwise, here, how come we aren't trying to hack away at each other here? Right? Because we live in a society where everybody is able to practice their religion. But if you live in a society where people are breaking into your house and stealing your food, you're going to try to find some way to defend yourself, whether it's through your ethnicity or your religious sect or whatever else maybe. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to, you totally covered it. I just want to just completely agree with you because I'm also Lebanese, and I was in Lebanon last summer, and I've been to every city in the country. I followed every religious faction, and it's 100% political. Yeah, I definitely agree with you.
Cool.
I had another question.
It's okay, go for it. We got all.
What Muslims think of Druze and their origins?
Sure. So if you look at the Druze faith, without getting into too much detail and boring everybody else, it goes back to Al-Hakim, who they felt was a reincarnation of God, and they had a Durzi who was supposedly a prophet, and Hakim actually had him killed for his heretical beliefs. So in essence, Muslims don't agree with Druze faith. They have mutated away from the original message into believing in reincarnation, the 5 principles, and not having any practice till past 40. And that's why the major Muslim body of the Ummah has only one belief. Muslims are really one Ummah. There are sects that have broken away, whatever they want to name themselves, but we as Muslims should all come together as one. We have the Quran still with us. You know, if there was reincarnation of the Prophet and reincarnation of God, it would be in the Quran. And we don't have it. So we still have the writings of the Prophet, peace be upon him, still with us, the Hadith. We can go look up Sahih from Da'if, from Mawdu'. So in essence, the Muslim body is one. Druze and Bataniya and all these sects kind of split away, and they have their own beliefs, but they're outside the Muslim Ummah. Yes?
So I have a question. Where would the ISIS stem from? Like in relation to your, because I know that like doing my own research and stuff, I know that they target like people who practice Islam the most out of all. So I know that's like one of the misconceptions, but I just was like unsure of how they originated.
To be honest with you, I don't know. Because none of us know. We don't really know where ISIS came from, how they get their money, how do they operate. To be honest with you, there's more questions there than there are answers. Because as somebody who lives in the US and only has access to the same news media that you do, I've never been to Syria, never been to Syria, just making sure everybody knows that.
I have.
You may have, but I haven't. You're Syrian, it's okay for you.
Go from there.
So if we look at it from what we see here, right? There was a country called Syria, and there was a country called Iraq, and there was no ISIS, there was no Daesh, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It was functioning in whatever way. It may not be great, but it was a functioning country. Iraq did have the highest education rate. You know, Syria was very well educated. People used to go there to study. And then you had an invasion of Iraq. And that's where Al-Qaeda in Iraq began. Pre-Saddam, there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, right? And then from there you had a bombing campaign where a destabilization of Syria, and then you had the destabilization of Syria. And these groups emerged. And the interesting thing is that these groups aren't like 10 guys in an apartment somewhere. They have like Humvees and they have like all these things. Where are Humvees made? Yeah? China? No? America?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. They also have M16s. Where are M16s made? Oh, that's crazy. They control a whole segment of Syria, and how do they fund it? They sell oil, right? Right? Okay. So have you ever pulled up to like a gas pump and it was like ISIS gas, and you kind of pump your gas from it? Right? Any of you? No. So who buys that oil? And who refines that oil? And who? I mean, you know, oil is not like refined in a garage somewhere. You have to have a refinery. You have to have factories. So, to be honest with you, it's all shady, you know. And what's the reality? I don't know. But I can tell you this: we as a country are strong enough and powerful enough and have enough technology that if we wanted to finish off a segment of Syria, we could. Why don't we? I don't know, right? So.
I'm going to go ahead and end it there, halfway-ish, and then we will come back for part 2. Yeah, the ISIS question. And the person said they go after more Muslims than anything else. I'm going to guess they go after Muslims because those Muslims aren't preaching or living the same way that they believe should be done. I'm guessing. It's, you know, which when you think about it, you know, militia people, you know, state militias in the U.S., you got some that lash out at a governor because they may be, that governor is of a different political belief than they are. So it's a, you know, ISIS is kind of like a militia here. Doing the same thing, actually, basing their decisions off of although it could be religious, it could be a political thing at the same time. I don't know. I don't know enough about ISIS, and honestly, I've just never really cared enough to look into them. So, anyways, we're going to end this video here, and we will be back with part 2 after a word from our sponsors. I don't have any. So until then, have a good day, have a good night.